Oh, if the walls of this old school could talk, they would say so many things. They would speak of community and friendships, struggle and triumph, silly pranks, and serious education. Within these walls, 4 decades of Moore kids learned how to read, write, and live a good life.
This school is a memorial. It is a memorable thing.
I can still remember practically every person I came in contact with in this school building.
This was the best time, the best place to grow up.
Every memory I have of Moore High School and going to school here is my favorite.
Mighty lives and proud together, with our banners high. Fighting on, we falter never. Victory is our cry. Students are united always. Never shall we part, even after graduation. More is in our hearts. Red and blue are glorious colors, wave on as we try to glorify our alma mater. Hail to thee, Moore High.
For many people, the story of Moore's old school began out here on the farm.
We moved to the Moore area in 1942 on a farm at 104th and May, and went to a one-room schoolhouse at 104th and Portland, which was Fairview Elementary at that time. Still have a Fairview up on 89th Street.
I started the first grade in a one-room schoolhouse at 104th and Portland. And there were a lot of one-room schoolhouses around.
In fact, one-room schools dotted the landscape throughout the countryside surrounding Moore, some starting just after settlement.
They said that the first school started within days after the run because the parents wanted their kids to start getting educated. And then the first official school was a little wooden building that was used as a church on weekends.
The first school bond election was held in 1898 for $1,500 and passed unanimously. Even today, Moore families can trace their educational lineage back to those early schools.
I guess my family is some of the, I have some 89er land run grandparents, great-grandparents, the Barton family over on 104th and May. Grandfather farmed around Moore, had a steam engine and a threshing crew.
Which meant hard work for farm kids.
We started at 4 in the morning. We quit at 10 that night, and that was 7 days a week. In the meantime, you got to go to school. And the reason you went to school is because your mother wanted you to get an education. She had none. And second, if you stayed home, the old man would work you about half to death, so you better go to school. The teachers were just a little bit easier here than Dad was at home.
The era of the one-room school began to fade starting in the 1920s. By the mid-40s, most had consolidated with the Moore School, flowing their students into Moore's school building.
It helped it grow that way. We had a lot of different schools, small schools that were around that closed, and they came into the school.
And this was the largest consolidated school district in the state of Oklahoma, geographically. until Putnam City came in, and then Putnam City became the largest.
It made a community that reached out, other than just, as I said, we lived about 3 miles this way, and Leonard, his family lived 3 or 4 miles that way. Everybody met at the school.
Which required a bigger school. In 1921, a second bond issue was held to construct a new building. Within its walls were a small number of kids who actually lived in Moore city limits, and a huge number of farm kids who rode in on buses.
In fact, when my father went here, students could drive a bus, and he drove a bus. I don't know if junior or senior year, he drove the small school bus.
Mike Stryker was our bus driver. Rode the bus for 3 years. He was come by. I think I heard him say 2 words. Boys, quieten down. That's about all I ever heard him say. Good guy.
In fact, many old school alumni remember their bus drivers just as well as their teachers.
I rode the school bus, the same school bus, for 12 years. When I started in school here in 1940, there were 9 school buses. I rode bus number 3. My school bus driver was Bill Swinney. He was my same driver for all 12 years that I was in school.
And it was a delight at the end of school. He would always take us down to the drugstore down there on Main Street and buy each one of us a fudgesicle or a popsicle or something like that.
Really, I think I enjoyed the bus rides as much as anything because there were so many different ages on there and you were friends with everyone. But I had a lot of relatives in this school, so I think that made it easy for me.
We'd all gone to bed, and Dad heard the fire bells ring and jumped up, and he said, "We've got a fire in town."
It was 1927, and a fire was raging at the school that had just been built 6 years earlier.
It was a volunteer fire department. It was all we had. So they got the bucket brigade and tried putting the fire out. I don't remember how quickly they got it put out, but the school was a total loss. So they had to start from scratch to build a new school.
With no school, kids were bused to Norman or to neighborhood homes.
Back when the old school burned, 2 blocks down the street here in our old garage, they taught 3 grades of kids in our garage for a year and a half till they got the school situation worked out.
So they didn't know whether they would ever have another school or not, but the people were so interested and so determined that their children would have an education that they passed, and there again, I don't remember the cost, another bond election, and everybody pitched in and did the building, and it was finished in 1928 and opened in 1929.
The new building is the current structure you see today. When its doors first opened in '29, it welcomed hundreds of kids and began a new era of education in Moore.
I was a Gentile in a huge Bohemian Czech community. We still laugh about that. All those Bohemians, all those Czechs in our class, all the Sudiks and Kakinkas, they were all related, they're all cousins. So be careful if you criticize somebody because you're talking to the first cousin. That was the atmosphere in Moore. Of course, Moore's been watered down by all the move-ins as America's been watered down. But it was a very close community. We all knew one another. Intermarriage of families back and forth. Seemed about half the school were cousins.
People didn't move in those days, and everybody knew everybody, and they weren't kin. Most everybody was kin at one time.
We just run into each other in the hall and say, "Hi, cuz," and
many people, growing up together, they found love and lasting relationships. So many marriages, they just seem to last longer here in the small town.
we were just one big happy family because everybody we went to school with, half of the kids that we went to school with, our parents had gone to school with their parents.
And my daddy had said he started more in the 4th grade. And I had also started in the 4th grade, and I thought that was really neat.
And for some of those families, that tradition continues on even today.
I have the 4th generation now going to more schools. My mother graduated here, my brother and myself, and my 2 children, my son and my daughter. And now I have 2 grandchildren, one going to Southmore High, she's a senior, and one going, my grandson going to Brick, he's in 8th grade.
And my grandson now is going to school here. And of course, that means a lot to me, you know, that this building is still here. And just like he and I talk about it, you know, I say he always says that's my grandpa's school there, you know.
By the 1940s, the old school building included 1st through 12th grades, meaning some kids spent all 12 years of their school career in the building.
You know, I was here from 2nd grade on, and a lot of the kids I graduated with had started a school here. 1st grade, went all the way through. I can think of, you know, several of them.
I think I figured out that there was 12 of my class that went 12 years here at Moore. I didn't have any brothers and sisters, so my class was my brothers and sisters.
It is an experience that is very difficult for anyone that has not experienced that to really understand. You become a relationship of almost brother-sister. Being an only child, I developed a relationship with some of those kids closer than I probably would if I had had brothers and sisters. I was extremely close to those kids. They were very, very much an impression on my life.
There are still some boys and girls in my class that also started 1st grade and graduated here that I'm still very much in touch with.
I think by having everybody in one school like we were, you had that many more friends as a general rule. And it's people that you've remained friends with through the years.
To get all 12 grades into one building, the layout was structured with upperclassmen on the 2nd floor and lower level grades below.
The 1st through the 6th grade was on the bottom floor with 2 grades on each. 1st had 2 grades, and then the 7th through the 12th was on the upper floor.
The building was expanded in the 40s to accommodate more kids, and portable buildings were regularly used to handle overflow, in addition to very pliable teachers.
You know, when you're the principal's wife, you take what nobody else wants. And where the beauty shop is down here now was a little room. And so I got that room for a year. I had 34 students in that room. There was no room for a table or anything besides the kids' desk and my desk.
Sitting downstairs, we heard all the noise from upstairs with the kids changing classes. And we always just couldn't wait till we could get up to go upstairs. We weren't allowed up there until we got into 7th grade.
Then you got to be a big dog. Then you went upstairs. And to the 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, and 12th grades upstairs. And then you were in tall cotton when you went upstairs.
You know, when you finally got upstairs, there was the big library and the study hall, which you wanted to avoid. Go out for sports, go out for glee club, do something to stay out of that 6th period study hall.
Aside from moving upstairs, the transition from 8th to 9th grades came with an additional rite of passage.
They had belt lines out here on the street. And the seniors and the upperclassmen, the sophomores and juniors and seniors would stand about 4 or 5 foot apart, length of a belt, and they'd run all of the freshmen through that line and hit them with a belt. And that line was about a block long.
And all the 9th graders, nobody escaped. The posse came out and got you and sent you to the belt line. And there'd be, after it was over with, there'd be big whelps on boys' arms, on their back, and because we didn't see their buttocks, but went through the hotline. And inside were the teachers and so forth. But that was tradition. Nothing was done. Can you imagine, fast forward 2011, if that would happen at a school where a ninth grader or a certain lower grade individual, boy, would go through a belt line? Wow, everybody be in jail. But that was tradition. It happened.
Girls didn't escape initiation ceremonies either.
They usually had the girls clean the sidewalk with toothbrushes, and they usually had to dress up like you would fix one side of your body, you know, like you would normally fix it, and the other side you had to leave undone, whatever. No makeup, no hair comb, no nothing.
Yesterday, December 7th, 1941, a date which will live in infamy.
I know I was about, I think 15 or 16 when Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. And I think I was a sophomore that year when that happened.
With the bombing of Pearl Harbor in 1941, the United States joined World War II, and everything about life and more changed, especially for high school juniors and seniors.
I graduated in 1947, but I was supposed to have graduated in 1944. I went in the United States Navy. Me and Clarence Jury, there's a whole bunch of us from here.
My brother, Clarence, he was in the 11th grade. He joined the Navy and was gone for a year. When he came back, I had caught up with him in school, so we graduated together.
We drafted about 4 weeks before my graduation time, and I was fortunate enough to go down to the board, drafting board, and they let me finish my high school. I told them if they let me finish my high school, I'd volunteer.
The people in this community on a day-by-day basis knew exactly what was happening to those people. And being a small community, we were greatly proud of those people going off and representing this community. To us, it was a big deal. Many of those persons came back in later years and graduated.
World War II ended in 45, and America was very high. In More America, Oklahoma City, all of Oklahoma, all of America was very, very jubilant. We had won the war. Life had gotten back to simple things. The war had ended. Daddies had come home, uncles had come home, and we were getting re-civilized. And I went to school at Moore during those days.
Really, it was the center of everything. Everything that happened seemed to be happening here in the schoolhouse. It was the main building.
It was the community center. We would have all sorts of carnivals. It was even back in the days when we still had minstrel shows, and they had minstrel shows on this stage right here back in the 30s and 40s. It was the center of the community. It served like a community center.
Actually took part in 2 different weddings in this auditorium, and I think they said, I know they had box suppers here. They had a lot of different events like that because it was the one place that was large enough to handle a good-sized crowd.
Giving back to the community, all those people that passed those bond issues, somehow or another, they had to be not so much repaid as appreciated for what they had done, and that's what the school was doing in providing all of these things.
And I remember being here, the musicals that we had on stage here, and we sat down here in the so-called orchestra pit, you know, 8, 10 of us, you know, would play the music for the Moore School musicals.
Wonderful musicals. We came over here, and Mrs. Griffith was a teacher at that time, and they had music, and they had all school program. I don't know how she did it, but no kindergarten, but 1 through 12. And every child that wanted to be in that program was in it.
We had PE up on the stage. I remember that in high school, and you had to be very careful that you didn't run off the stage with chasing somebody.
The auditorium was truly a multipurpose room for school and community. When alumni come back to see it today, their reaction is almost always the same.
In the auditorium, every time I come in, it gets smaller. In school, it was big. It shows you what time we do.
This auditorium that we're in now, I thought was huge with all the chairs and the 2 aisles, and now it looks so small.
I thought it was about 2 blocks long, block wide, and a block high. It looks small. But like Andy Janko and I weren't very big then, so you know, everything looked big to us.
High school sports were also a central part of life in Moore, drawing most of the town to varsity basketball, baseball, or football games, even if the facilities were a bit lacking. Basketball games, for example, were played on the auditorium stage.
Well, the stripes are still up there right now. You can see, it was, of course, when they'd go to the goal down at this end, you couldn't hardly see them if you were sitting over on this side of the building.
A few people even ran out into the footlights and off of the stage here.
Eventually, a new gymnasium was built in the early 50s, moving the games off stage and onto a real court. The early football facilities were equally problematic before a new stadium was built in the 50s.
The old football field was down where the community building is now. And it was just a sump hole. It just where that was the lowest part of the town, and everything drained down there. Just a mud hole is all it was.
When I cheerleaded the first year I cheerleaded, we were over where the community center is now. That was our football field. And then the next year we built a new one that's over here on I-35. And that was my last year, that was my senior year. And my husband played his last football game on that field also.
Oh yeah, it was a big, Friday nights were huge, more. Everybody in town went to the games, and they were, always had good teams.
In the early days, they had girls basketball, a good girls basketball team. 2 of my sisters played. And when Chester Anderson became the superintendent here, he took girls basketball out of the academics because he said it was too rough a game for girls.
I went out for boxing, and Marvin Anderson was a boxing coach, and I think he was a real nice person. And so I enjoyed what little bit of boxing I did.
But the teachers were heroes to us. There was 1 or 2 of them we were all scared of, and the more we talk about them, it was always the same teachers we were scared of. But they loved us, and they wanted us to succeed. They wanted us to be educated. They wanted us to have the better things in life. That's what they were interested in.
Teachers back then took an interest in the students, and I can almost remember all of them. I know when I went into 1st grade, we had a teacher who was a little strict, I thought, but would take a ruler and rap you on the knuckles if you got out of control. Then we went into the 2nd grade, and there was Miss Estes, and she was lovely. We went into 3rd grade, and we had that 1st grade teacher again.
They were very respected. I'll tell you, everyone respected the teachers. Maybe you said, oh, I don't like what they did or something, and they didn't like maybe the homework, but still, they were respected.
And none more so than longtime principal Mr. McChesney.
There's probably a lot I could tell you, but he's just a kind, sweet person. He's very patient, very patient. I didn't have a lot of contact with him, thank goodness, but he's just a good person. He was friendly and outgoing with everyone.
And the stories of how he handled student discipline are legendary.
So they told us they wasn't going to excuse any of us, to go to the Fat Stock Show. We wasn't excused. Well, undoubtedly we didn't pay attention, so that afternoon we decided we slipped off, about 4 or 5 of us, and we went to Norman for the Fat Stock Show, and we were wandering around in there, and who'd we see? Mr. McChesney, our principal, the one that told us we wasn't going to get excused. He looked up and he said, well, hi guys, how you doing? You enjoying the show? And blah, 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 And that was it. He said, have a good time. Well, the next morning, first thing that was going, called a few of our names out in school, in the class, you know, report to the principal's office. Well, you know what happened then? He had a paddle about that long, real like that, with little holes in it. And he said, you boys know what you're here for, you know, and so bend over, start one at a time. There's so many. Get your swats. He got through with it, that, and then he said, I'll tell you what, he said, I'm working up a fishing trip this weekend down at the river. He says, we'll all go fishing. So that's the kind of school we was in those days. I don't think you could have that nowadays.
He disciplined, but he was fair, and all of them said that. They'd say, yeah, I did it, you know, he was fair about it. He was a very fair person, and everybody still likes him. He still comes to our reunions.
We all had a song. We would sing what was, looked over Jordan and what did I see? Old man McChesney a-coming after me.
Another teacher who made a lasting impression on students was the typing teacher, Mrs. Bennett.
In my high school here, I took a typing class, Miss Bennett, and I went to Tinker and took a typing test and passed it, and that's the way I got on it, my first job.
She made you get your work done, but she did it in a way that you just loved her too. My husband was in her class and he wasn't doing too good in typing. And she said, Charles, if you don't start doing that typing and getting some better grades in here, you're not playing football. And he ended up being one of the best typists that she had. So she made a believer out of him.
One of the guys in typing class in Miss Bennett's class, the typewriter wouldn't work right. It wasn't his fault. He kept having trouble with it. Finally, he just grabs it up, steps over the window, and drops it out of the second floor window. Destroyed the typewriter.
Virtually everyone who attended the old school will tell you their education was second to none.
The best math teacher I ever had that got me to appreciate math starting in the 7th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade was Mrs. Webb. Fast forward, I majored in math at the University of Oklahoma many years later.
I had an English teacher which I liked very well, Mrs. Durham. Most people talk about her. She was very strict, but we learned in English. She taught English, and we learned a lot from her.
And I know our English teacher, Mrs. Durham, everybody talked about how she could raise her eyebrows if she was aggravated with you about something, because she could raise that one and, well, you knew you better watch out.
I always thought I had the best class in school. I don't know why, but it seemed like I always felt like I've got the best kids in school. Every year I got I got the best kids.
I was an overlearner here. There's about 3 different years they had me come back and learn it over. So
it was almost fun to come to school. Almost.
I can remember having a good time one Halloween. That was always a big deal in Moore. Trying to slip up the alley and turn the siren on without getting caught, or getting in the First Baptist Church and ringing the bell. I watched the older kids do these things. I didn't do them.
Halloween was a big problem.
Halloween was traditionally a notorious night in Moore. The prankster seemed to come out in everyone.
Around Halloween, we always egged the FFA teacher's house, Mr. Hare. But then the next day we always come over and help clean it up, and then we help paint the house.
On one Halloween, it said outhouse down here at Main and Broadway, and it said on fire.
Class of '55 had a reputation of being a little ornery, and I never felt that there was anything that was ever, out of the ordinary.
Well, maybe one thing out of the ordinary. According to old school lore, a cow ended up on the 2nd floor of the school one Halloween night.
the dairy farm that was mentioned earlier, Tom Nail, some of his dairy cattle made it upstairs, and they don't really know if they just wanted up there or how they got there. Yeah, he might have wanted to go to school. It was so much fun to go to school here.
Well, you bring her in the front door, you can get a cow to go up steps. If you've ever been around dairy cattle, you find that they don't go down steps very good, so they'll stay up there.
And I mean, the janitor was so mad, they called in all kinds of people to clean up after the cow.
As a matter of fact, the next year at Halloween, the janitor was sitting at the front door with a shotgun.
And amazingly, no one was ever caught for this incredible prank. To this day, the perpetrators remain a mystery, sort of.
Like I say, my lawyer will tell you I'm innocent. I mean, as long as I got the money, he'll tell you I'm innocent.
I'm kind of like Jolene. I don't know much about that, and I think they're through looking.
I hope they quit looking. I don't know. Because if I'd have known I was going to live this long, I'd have taken better care of everything.
By the late 40s, baby boomers were coming on the scene, bringing a large influx of new students to Moore. School officials worked to keep up by building Central Elementary School, a new gymnasium, and a new football stadium. It was a special time in Moore.
I was in the good times. We always just had really good times. Every Friday night was date night for the drive-in movies or whatever.
If you've seen the movie American Graffiti, that was Moore. I mean, that was Moore here.
Complete with a local drive-in, the 77 Cafe, opened by the parents of Charles Thompson.
He built a little 16 by 32 building and started the 77 Drive-In Cafe.
His dad gets credit for running, but he didn't have anything to do with it. Christine ran the drive-in and ran the whole family, really. If it wasn't for her, they'd all been picking cotton somewhere, I think.
It was a happening place. Mr. Howard from Howard Chevrolet, my mother was always hiding his keys. You know, he had a keychain. She'd get the keys, and she would hide Lynn Marvel. We had one policeman at the time, and she'd hide his pistol from him, you know, and just things like that.
After the games, that was the place everybody went, and we hung out and visited and just had fun. And I hated to see that building go. I hated to see it leave.
Like all good things, it didn't last forever. By the mid-1950s, change was looming for Moore. The Great Migration from Oklahoma City to the suburbs was gearing up, bringing with it a tidal wave of new faces. By 1958, the era of Old Moore High School came to a close with its last graduating class. The old school building continued to serve as a middle school until the early 1980s, when it officially closed its doors. More recently, it reopened as a business center with offices, a cafe, and a freshly renovated auditorium. It remains a centerpiece of community activity to this day. And if you listen closely, the walls of this building do talk every time its alumni come near.
So I think, yes, it got a good education, and not only from the scholarly type, but in education in living and being human.
It still has all the memories that's up here in my head for all the good times that I've had here at school.
I just wanted to, stay here all of my life if I just didn't have to play the piano.
There were a lot of happy times here. Every day, if you look back now, was a happy time. You just didn't realize it then.
Has a lot of memories, and they're good memories because we had a lot of good people in town.
Oh yes, I wished I was back doing it again. We all had a good time, I think.
I learned a respect for school and country here in this auditorium that everyone in the United States should experience.
I just know it was a joyous time for me. I enjoyed school. I enjoyed my high school. I think I enjoy life, and I think a lot of that is from the stability that I've learned through the years that I went to Moore.
They were polite, they were respectful, and I still think a great deal of them.
There was always something for everybody to do rather than somebody being left out. There wasn't very many people left out. if they were left out, they left town.
So it's been a ride. It's been a real exciting place to live and go to school and know all of these people, and can't imagine how good it is.
Well, I say this, thank God for letting me go to Moore High School, Moore Junior High, and thank God for letting me be a Moore Lion. Thank you.